All right, so last time, just a quick review, we had a little lesson on syntax. We'll call this syntax lesson 1. Again, going back to the most fundamental elements of an English sentence, we obviously need a subject, we need a predicate, we need a subject, a noun, we need a verb, a predicate. Those terms are interchangeable, but we talked about 3 basic types of sentences. The most basic is just subject, verb, Bill sang. We talked about the kernel 2, which is subject, verb, object. So sentences don't always have an object, but they often do, like Mary threw the ball would be the object. And then we talked about this kernel 3, which is has to do with a linking verb, which typically is a form of to be, but basically it's kind of like an equal sign. So we talk about Jody is a junior. The class was loud. Notice those are either renaming words or adjectives that describe. So 3 basic kinds of sentences, and we can, of course, build on those, and we will build on those with lesson 2. But before we go to lesson 2, let's take a look at our sentence here. He was extremely ambivalent about the trip. He badly wanted to travel, but hated to miss the summer activities at home. So right off the bat, you're probably saying to yourself, it sounds like 2 sentences rather than 1. So we have a comma here. That would definitely be a comma splice, wouldn't it? So we need to make that a semicolon. He was extremely ambivalent about the trip. So notice this would be kernel 3, wouldn't it? He was ambivalent. Subject, he was, linking verb, ambivalent is an adjective. And then we've added a little bit of details about it about the trip. The second part, he badly wanted to travel, but hated to miss the summer activities at home. Summer is a season. We don't capitalize seasons, so we should make that lowercase. You might ask yourself, do we need a comma here? And if we look at what comes after, hated to miss the summer activities, there's no subject there, so we don't need a comma. And then finally, we get activities, and of course, that is a misspelling. It should be IES, shouldn't it? So he badly wanted to travel, but hated to miss the summer activities at home. I think we've got it now. So the word is ambivalent, and if you're ambivalent about something, you just don't have a strong feeling. So holding opposite feelings and attitudes at the same time. So he was extremely ambivalent. He badly wanted to travel, but he hated to miss the activity. So he's got this internal conflict going, and that's what ambivalence is all about. Now, the root ambi is from Latin meaning both. So that's where the both sides come in. The other word ambiguous, again, is doubtful or uncertain, especially for being obscure or indistinct. So if I'm unclear in an explanation about something and you're not sure what I'm saying, you might say that my directions are ambiguous. So if I tell you to drive somewhere and I give you directions and you can't quite understand them, they're not clear enough, right? All right, going back to our sentence here, he was extremely ambivalent. Again, we're using just the word ambivalent. You could use a colon here. I didn't talk about that in the sentence, but because the first part illustrates the second part, we could use a semicolon in this case. We could also use a colon. Again, a colon has to come, you have to have a complete sentence before the ending of that colon. So in this case, that would be correct also. Again, we switch the capitalization here to lowercase, and then we fix the spelling of activities. All right, now a little review of vocabulary from way back in the beginning of the semester. If I asked you to give me an adjective that meant without feeling indifferent, and then another one, showing an ability to understand and share the feelings of others. So both of these have something to do with feelings. And you might remember that there's a root that has to do with feelings, as in pathos. So this is a little retrieval practice. Without feeling indifferent is apathetic, without feeling, right? And then sharing or showing an ability to share the feelings of others, that's empathy. So again, it comes from the Greek root having to do with feelings or suffering. Okay, now lesson 2 for syntax. Obviously, one of the most common ways we expand sentences from basic subjects and verbs is we add things called adjectives and adverbs. This is very, very basic review, but we want to build on this, obviously. So we know, or at least we should know, that adjectives modify typically nouns, right? So adjectives typically come before nouns. The blue car, the small car, the happy student. And then adverbs modify verbs. And again, they not always, but typically end in ly, and they typically come after. Again, there are exceptions, but for right now, we're just talking very basic ideas. So adjectives, we start with a sentence. Mary threw a ball. That's a subject, a verb, predicate, and an object, right? Well, we want to describe that ball, so we add a couple of adjectives. A large red ball. We wouldn't say red large ball, we would say a large red ball. Two adjectives modifying the object ball. I ate a apple, so that's a very basic. I ate a apple. So subject, verb, object. And we want to tell a little bit more about the apple, so we add an adjective modifying it to say that it's sour. The dogs barked. So dogs barked, that's basic subject, verb, kernel 1. We want to add an adjective to show that the dog is vicious. So again, very basic, but again, adjectives are obviously very important part of speech. The other part of speech we use quite a bit, again, modifies the verb. So Bill sang. How did he sing? He sang quietly. The students sang. That would be a kernel 1, right? Students, subject, predicate, verb, sang. Well, enthusiastically, the students sang. Notice in that case, the adverb enthusiastically comes at the beginning, but as long as it makes sense, you can put it before or after. So enthusiastically, the students sang. The rain fell. How did the rain fall? It fell steadily. Again, there are other kinds of adverbs, but again, these are just the more basic ones. So again, we're using building blocks of basic parts of speech to build sentences. So lesson 2, just make sure you understand how to identify those parts of speech and see how they're used to build sentences. Again, if you ever have any questions about any of these topics, feel free to bring them up during class so we can clarify. But that's it for today. Thanks.